spring pines, rocky coasts, and folks who are mighty, mighty fine and let them in. With those of scouting teams as we follow on to greater fame. Resica, land of golden dreams, hiking trails of crystal mountain streams. Let's just scout with spirit bold and true. Now let us stand and take our road anew. On my honor, I will do my best to be bound to see that scouting spirit blesses everyone. No matter where they be, as we go on forgotten our country. Our country.
Good morning,
Big
Springs
Camp.
It's another beautiful
Beautiful
day in
day
the
in the
Poconos.
Poconos Mountains.
That might have been worse.
One of these days we'll get this to work, but you know, we're just going to roll with it for now. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Big Springs Life podcast. We've got an excellent episode planned out for you this week. Here with me, I have two very special guests. Back again for his second appearance, we have our Assistant Camp Director, Steve Mach. Steve, that's your
They can't
cue.
see you, Steve.
I waved again. You know,
Yeah,
people still
okay.
can't see me. Steve Mach, Assistant Camp Director. This is my 12th summer on camp staff. My 5th as the Assistant Camp Director. I spent 3 summers as the Program Director before that. Was a commissioner for a little while, and way back in 2009, I got my start working in handicraft, teaching leatherwork merit badge.
And also with us here this week, we have Senior Counselor and Scout Book Expert, Matthew McGovern.
Good morning, everyone. Yes, as Andy said, my name is Matthew. I am a senior counselor here, and I deal with all the Scout Book fun for Resica Falls, so connecting everyone to their badges. I'm a member of the council's camping committee and one of an unofficial group called the Camp Elders, who hang around probably too long after we've stopped officially working on camp staff. And way back in 2008, that's right, 1 year before Assistant Camp Director Steve Mach, I got my start on camp staff at Treasure Island Scout Reservation as the trading post manager.
Did not know that. That's a little fun fact I got to learn today.
Yeah, he's an island guy.
Yeah.
I am an island guy.
A lot of island people. Anyway, all right. So today's episode, we are talking about how did we get here? How did Resica Falls come to be? How did we grow to the prominence we are in this year in the it's the 62nd camp season, I believe, if I'm doing the math right.
63rd.
63rd.
Well, probably the 64th season, 63 years.
That tracks, yeah. But how did
1957.
1957.
Yeah.
I
Okay.
found my 50th anniversary CSP earlier today as I was transferring patches from bin to bin.
I just remember because like 2 summers ago, 60. But yeah, we're talking about our rise to greatness, so to speak, inspired by, Steve, would you like to share the excellent news of what's occurring tomorrow at time of recording?
Yeah, I think this is kind of the really cool and almost the pinnacle of our journey as a scout camp. But our virtual program is being featured on Good Morning America on July 16th. There is a couple different virtual programs being featured. And the Resica Falls Virtual Camp is one of those things that Good Morning America all its viewers about that people have to do things this summer as we're still continuing to experience this coronavirus.
Yeah. It's very exciting. Unfortunately, with how we upload the episodes, you won't be able to see that live when you're listening to this, but certainly check out the clips if you can find it on the internet. It'll certainly be interesting to see. So, without any further ado, if we're talking about how we got here, what better place to start than the absolute beginning as mentioned just a couple moments ago, 1957 was when kind of Resica Falls got started. So do either of you want to share your knowledge of that occurrence?
Yeah, so
Sure.
Resica kind of came about. We can kind of bounce back and forth here a little bit, Matthew. Resica came about as a joint venture between the then Philadelphia Council and the Valley Forge Council, two neighboring councils in southeastern Pennsylvania. The 1955 Capital Campaign organized several major camp improvement projects at the camps for both councils, and it was a joint venture.
It's called the Federation.
Yes, called the Federation, and the Federation, well, obviously it allowed Resica Falls Scout Reservation to be created by 1957, but it also added significant improvements to Treasure Island, to Camp Hart, and to Camp Delmont over the subsequent years. Pretty much built most of the modern Hart that we're familiar with in a lot of instances. So that was a very, very big undertaking. So 1957, Federation joint venture opens up Resica Falls Scout Reservation, and it was supposed to be 6 camps, Matthew, does that sound right?
6 camps, but only 3 of them were actually built. So Firestone Explorer Base, Big Springs Camp, and the Great Bend were the 3 of the 6 that were actually built on the 4,200 acres. And this is the second sort of close. I mean, the first joint venture. It was the first joint venture out of Philadelphia and Valley Forge, but obviously Camp Hart and Camp Delmont did have adjoining property lines. So it was, the second time that the councils had worked together in close proximity, but the first time that they had actually joined together to do this sort of campaign.
Yeah. So as Matthew said, there's the 3 camps, and each one kind of had their own distinct purpose. Big Springs Camp was for those troops that were really going for 1 week of program. Great Bend Camp was for those troops that were going to be doing 2 weeks, subsequent weeks back to back. And then Firestone Explorer Base, which was designed for the Explorer Scout program, sort of akin to the current venturing program, focused on high adventure and things like that. Eventually, Firestone would become focused around cooking your own, where units would do patrol cooking and cook in their sites, versus dining hall cooking, which would happen in Big Springs and Great Bend. So the Federation jointly operated Resica Falls Scout Reservation for several years, up until 1965, at which point Valley Forge Council took over full control and operation of Resica Falls. Big supporter of this Resica Falls project was Roger Firestone, who Firestone Tires he was the big guy right there. He was a big supporter of that thing.
He was part of the Firestone family. He was not one of the he was not the founder of the company or the CEO, but he was related to the family.
Yeah.
His father, his grandfather, excuse me, was the founder of the company, and so he was he had received a lot of money, and so he and his wife Anne were big supporters of scouting in the Valley Forge Council and with the organization nationally. Roger was a recipient of the Silver Beaver Award from the Valley Forge Council and the Silver Buffalo Award from the National Council, both in the 1960s, and then he actually passed away very suddenly, just 2 or 3 years after he received the Silver Buffalo Award. So not that long after he gave a lot of money to Valley Forge, helped build large portions of the reservation. So Lake Roger is named after him. Lake Anne is named after his wife. The Cradle of Liberty Council office, the Roger S. Firestone Resource Center in Wayne, is also named after him. So
the camps continued to operate for several years. Each camp was kind of built to have around 200 people. They never got to those other 3 camps, like Matthew said. As Scouting's memberships were decreased into the 1970s and 80s, the need for having a reservation with 6 camps wasn't really a thing. Eventually, in the early 1980s, Great Bend Camp would shut down, and so that would leave Firestone and Big Springs as the 2 camps operating on the property, and then eventually Firestone would close down. The last summer for that was 2004 with the Cook Your Own program. So the camp that we really referred to a lot of times as Resica Falls, where we have our summer camp operations based out of, is really primarily Big Springs Camp. At this point, the STEM Center, some of the further campsites from the main part of camp, the archery range, boat course, those are all what were part of Great Bend Camp. So it's now the Big Springs Camp has kind of expanded out and taking control of those areas as well. But the
dividing line was, I think it's where the rifle and shotgun range is where the split was, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah,
and
so couple of the Big Springs and Great Bend shared a couple different program areas. They shared the rifle range, and then the lake was also shared. Lake Roger was shared between those 2 camps.
But a little fun fact, easy way to also remember is, correct me if I'm wrong on this, but the camps associated with Big Springs, the campsites associated with that camp, were all Native American tribe names. So like Shenandoah, Chippewa, Cayuga, all those campsites.
One word.
But one word.
Yeah.
That's the important thing.
And the
here.
others are 2 words. Yeah.
Yeah. Running Fox.
2 feathers and Running Fox. And
Twin
Hill.
North Wind. Yeah. So on and so forth. So a little fun trivia.
I prefer the campsite names in Firestone, to tell you the truth, like Porcupine Ridge and Eagles.
Yeah, they're like a little combo of both.
Falcon Crest and
Bear Hollow.
Yeah, Bear Hollow is a good one. I love Porcupine Ridge. I think that one might be my favorite, though.
It's a nice campsite.
It's a classic.
But so we kind of fast forward. 1996, Philadelphia Council and Valley Forge Councils merged together to become the Cradle of Liberty Council that we know today. And now Resica Falls Scout Reservation is back under the control of what had initially started the Federation, is now this unified council open for all the scouts in southeastern Pennsylvania. And
4 camps at the time that it merges.
Yes.
Well, actually, that's not true. 3 reservations with
No, it was 4
5
camps.
5 camps, I guess, because Firestone was open at the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds correct.
And then, I guess at our highest, we ran 6 different camps.
Yeah.
We're including Firestone, but that was only for a year or 2. Overlap there at the end with Garrison.
Yes.
So that kind of takes us from nice fast track history from the opening to early 2000s. But the 2000s is really kind of where things start really picking up. You'd agree with that, right? Or
Yeah, I would say
the mid part of the 2000s, yeah, 2005 or so.
Yeah. So, Steve, in our notes, you had made a comment of, as you call it, the Resica Triumvirate. Would you like to
Yeah, so
talk about
2006, Chris Brenner became the camp director at Resica Falls, and so he's one part of the triumvirate. His assistant camp director was Steve Ranjo, and then the third part of that group was Mike Coyne, who was a lodge chief with Unami Lodge, and then became the camping chairman of the Cradle of Liberty Council. He was camping chairman for probably about 7 or 8 years. So the three of them together kind of developed and steered the course of Resica Falls Scout Reservation from that point, from 2006 onward. And
Yeah, certainly.
Yeah, Chris was, the sort of day-to-day operations of the camp and, year-round things with camp masters and really revitalizing and regenerating our camp master program. And then Ranjo was just a magical individual. The things that he could get people to do, or the things that he helped people understand that they were capable of doing, was really remarkable. And that a lot of that came out of his background. He was very much a people person. He was an educator, and helped his students, and he helped his scouts. And longtime lodge advisor. Just an absolutely one of a kind, perfectly unique individual. And then Mike Coyne was the visionary, and also the woodworker, the master builder extraordinaire.
He did a lot of the designing, if I'm not mistaken, for some of the buildings and advancements, correct?
of them.
Pretty much everything, yeah.
I guess it actually started maybe a year before Chris became the camp director, 2005, with building Unami Lodge. So 2005 was 90th anniversary of the Year of the Arrow. Unami Lodge wanted to do a major project in camp, akin to the building of the Unami Lodge at Treasure Island that the lodge fundraised and built in the 1920s. So 90th anniversary comes around, major fundraising campaign for Unami Lodge, which we utilize as our camp office during the summer. The money was raised from donations and the sales of properties. And it was built pretty much all by volunteers, and Mike led that construction. Steve Ranjo was the lodge advisor at the time. Mike was the project manager and also the chief benefactor of Unami, donating a significant portion of the funds for that project, organizing countless work weekends over the next 2 years to kind of finish that. So that was kind of, I guess, the start where, they brought Chris on board on the lodge house. Ranjo was the lodge advisor. Mike was the project manager, and that set the tone for the next 15 years after that.
And if you went back and looked, if you went back and looked at the camp then and compared it to now, you would think that you were in a totally different place.
You really would.
If you went back to 2004, before the old trading post was torn down. The old trading post is where the lodge house is now. It was, I don't want to say dingy. Dingy sounds almost disrespectful, but in comparison to what it was today, much more rustic, much more rough around the edges, Definitely not the sort of shining jewel of our camping properties that it is now.
Yeah. And yeah, as mentioned, that new lodge, the new office really kind of kicked off this multi-year process of improvements in so many different ways.
So it's funny you called it the office, because initially it was the trading post again still. And people lived in in what are now offices in the back part. The office was split between what is today the trading post and some of the rooms in Bear Lodge for the first couple summers, 2006 and a little bit of 2007. And then that's when that transition happened, around 2007, office, trading post, health lodge kind of deal.
That seemed impractical before having it all split around constantly, but I wasn't a camper then, so maybe it worked better than I'm imagining. But yeah, so get a new office, new train post. what are some of the other things in these the mid to early 2000s and late 2000s that we started getting as well?
I mean, even I guess the Resica had I guess maybe a little more of a track record than some of our other camps about having new updated facilities, which is, Chris and Steve and Mike just kind of continued that legacy and certainly sped up the process. But the coat
we had the Cove course, we had built a new rifle range at Firestone right before the camp closed, I think, right?
Yeah. Bear Lodge was built in the early 2000s. So those were all, the dining hall was initially extended with the porch that was on the front and closed in the late 90s. So there were some little improvements and stuff.
To be fair, it was relatively easy to update and improve things at Resica as opposed to at Treasure Island or something like that.
Yeah.
But
For those who don't know,
drivability.
Treasure Island is one of the camps council operated that was located on an island in the middle of the Delaware, and to get onto it, you had to take a boat. So yeah, making those improvements.
well, you could drive if the river was low enough and you had a truck that was tall enough. So there were some instances where things were driven across onto the island.
Or helicoptered.
Or helicoptered, yes, things were helicoptered on. Sometimes those things that were driven on were, like an old like Chevy Cabriolet or something like that ends up dying on a different island at some point in its history and just getting pushed into a pit. But there were some pretty crazy droughts back in the 70s.
The more you know.
So, but yeah, things were a lot easier to do at Resica Falls than probably the other camps. So the first major improvement happened in 2006 was the new pool. The pool that was there was original to when the camp opened in 1957. The shower house was rather rustic, open air. So it wasn't even really closed in. One big shower room and everything like that. It wasn't really conducive to where we are today or where we were even then. So new pool, water slide, new shower house, and that was that first big project. And pretty much every year since then, there's probably at least one major project you can kind of point to that has happened to kind of improve camp. 2007, they renovated the trading post to make that into a usable trading post, and then they did some more finishing touches in 2011. But
2010 through was just 2010 was the dining 2010 2011
9 to 10. 10 was the
9 to
first
10
new dining hall.
I remember
the dining hall.
I remember them breaking ground at the last colors of my summer camp in 2009 of that week there, because I was there week 7. So
yeah, we had conclave in 2009 with the old dining hall, and man, was it packed. Was it just absolutely packed, especially because Saturday night of conclave was just these outrageous rainstorms.
I mean,
so everything was packed into the dining hall, and now we have the Sir John Templeton dining hall, which is just absolutely magnificent, though not air conditioned.
Before the Matthew talks about the conclave and it being packed, and even weeks of summer camp, the dining hall was pretty packed, and that kind of facilitated the need for expanding the dining hall. Several summers, the staff ate outside under tarps, and as the staff did for the conclave in 2009 as well in some cases.
Dining al fresco.
Not enough space, but
yeah.
Hey, you know what? We were 10-12 years before the curve of all al fresco dining.
Yeah.
Very, very true.
And a couple of times we had to get super distant about it. We'd send people, my first 2 years when we had to still do that, before the invention of two seatings, we'd send people over to sports to eat as well because we ran out of space. So real distant.
Yeah,
So
for
yeah,
sure.
those
So
10.
kind of continuing on, you know,
Well,
The
I think,
Richards Arena in
yeah.
2012.
yeah.
The next big one.
So that was
Yeah, so Tom Richards was a past lodge officer and a section chief who passed away very suddenly at the end of 2010 in the summer. And so the lodge raised a huge amount of money in honor of Tom through private donations, through flap sales. At one point, one in every 7 flaps we had ever issued was a Richards Arena flap or something like that. I calculated it out. That is no longer the case. We are far beyond that ratio. Yeah, that was and in 2012, we hosted the Back to the Falls Camporee, which was the inauguration of the Richards Arena as well, something like 850 people camping for the weekend. I don't know, Barry had to do his car thing again, which he so loves. So that was a fairly remarkable turn of events.
Yes, a great way to christen the arena. It was quite a fun show.
And the area that
Absolutely.
actually is the arena was the archery range.
Right.
So and then in 2009 we actually moved the archery range from there to where it is now. Not nearly as nice or well constructed as is now. A little more rustic, some tarps and a shed. And then that was an activity field where we do some evening programs and stuff for 2009, 2010, before the construction started for the arena.
Yeah,
the old Great Bend Dining Hall started out, it was kind of just storage after the camp closed. But in 2010, it served as the Handicraft Lodge. Handicraft moved from what is now sports on the parade field to the Great Bend. And then that was 2010 to 2015. And then 2016, we have our new Handicraft Lodge, the Eibner Handicraft Pavilion, right along the camp road, which allowed
Absolutely
us to,
gorgeous.
Fantastic building, allowed us to really expand that handicraft program and also expand our STEM program. And I think a big part of, we weren't just building things. There was a lot of other stuff that went into it. We were expanding and offering more programs with every expansion that happened. Whether we, just shifting one program area to another for a better location, or expanding it out. With the Eibner Handicraft Pavilion, we're able to install kilns and offer pottery and sculpture merit badge. But that also allowed us to move our STEM center from Cox Lodge up to the Bend. And I mean, our STEM program was able really to take some big leaps with an expanded pavilion, and it would have been, slowly been developing and growing inside this small building and expanding beyond this small building, and it needed a bigger space as well. So the Handicraft Pavilion was kind of like a two-pronged thing there. We were able to expand handicraft and then make our STEM program even stronger as well.
Yeah, it really rocketed off, if you will. Rocket jokes. But yeah, no, it's we added a ton of stuff that we weren't able to because back when I was in Cox and Brooks, it was like limited to radio, photography, cinematography, and
electronics and electricity.
Yeah, those. And
it was more of like a media center, and we called it the media center.
We did call it the media center. Yeah, it definitely was not STEM.
Yeah, there's like sprinklings of kind of thrown in there. But with the move to the former Great Bend Dining Hall, we are able to, add things like engineering and robotics, chemistry, things like that.
We were planning, was it this year we were going to add composite or?
Yeah, we're going to add composite materials this year. And with our virtual program, we're able actually to, not do composite materials, but offer programming merit badge, which is pretty cool. And might take some work to offer that in our traditional summer camp program. But it, seems like the scouts are really into it.
They also got to take SpaceX from sports, which makes so much more sense. Unfortunately, I have to walk a little bit farther for rocket launch Fridays, but it's well worth the hike.
A little bit of exercise, work off some of those apple pies at the dining hall.
Yeah, it's good, but always a fun day. So yeah, kind of that.
Because like Matthew said, camp looked totally different 15 years ago.
Oh.
So you think back, and Scoutcraft was down along the Bushkill in what is
Cayuga?
Comanche campsite right
Comanche, now. The lowest sea.
2012, we added the Native American village. That was just a field down by the falls, and we have a whole program area there where we do fly fishing and Indian lore and archaeology merit badges.
The flagpoles would have been where Tom the Toad is, and 3 separate ones.
That's right. Yeah, the 2012 is when we installed that yard arm flagpole in front of the dining hall. Moved the old flagpoles from where they were.
What else would there have been? Didn't Cope used to be at the ATV field?
Yeah, that was in the 90s. That moved in the 90s. So but then we added the ATV program. So like I said, it's more than just, facilities, and the facilities are kind of those tangible things that you can see, and you can get people to get behind projects that people support and stuff like that. But we've added and expanded programs. The ATV program, I added that in 2016. Another opportunity for older scouts.
Yeah. We extended the shotgun range. We added cowboy action shooting with a new range spur, I guess, off of the rifle range. All of these things, constant improvement, right? We have to keep them coming back, and even the things that are not major physical improvements, right? Like our expansions at the lake to include the wibbits and things like that, things to make the program more fun, more interesting, and really constantly ask, what are we doing that we can do better, and how can we do it better? And then, Steve and Chris and John and, all the camp or the program folks at the council like to go to Atlantic City once a year and spend a lot of money, and sometimes they bring back some cool program things.
Well, yeah, that's why we're spending money. That's kind of where that Whibbit stuff came from the ACA Tri-State American Camping Association Tri-State Conference that is held in Atlantic City, where essentially people from the whole country gather together in the camping field, share ideas and different things like that. So it's a pretty neat thing, and that's where the Whibbits kind of came from there.
Is that also where the skate park and bubble balls came from?
That is where skate park and bubble balls came from, Andy.
Oh boy! So
all right, Andy.
And the Gaga pit. The Gaga pit was a tri-state purchase.
All right, so 50% isn't bad. We'll just leave it at that.
Skate park
rollers. They came there.
Easy roll.
What was that one?
The easy rollers.
Oh,
the little like pedal thing.
Yeah, the pedal cars.
The idea of installing a basketball court on the parade field, blacktop basketball court.
Human foosball court.
Human foosball. That came from Philmont.
Right,
really?
But another improvement.
Yeah. But that sports area.
Oh my God, building the human foosball court was the worst. one of the worst Campmaster weekends.
Lots of rocks and nothing is level.
I mean,
Yeah.
that's just Resica that you've described every campsite.
Well, I guess
Taking
when you think about that, I mean, that's,
taking the Wibbits apart at the end of the first summer. Whew.
that was a
Oh
project.
yeah, Matthew, Chris, it's gonna be easy. It's gonna take you an hour, maybe two. We're still up there at 9 o'clock at night trying to take these things apart.
Yeah, that's take them apart, fold them, make sure there's not a drop of moisture on them.
Andy, you talked about the campsites too. I think, one of the big undertakings we've taken in the last we'll say 7 years is expanding and updating the campsites. Bear Paw and Deer Run campsites were added in 2013. Shawnee and Seneca campsites were added in 2014. And then starting in 2015, we've been putting new platforms and new canvas into our campsites on a rotating basis. We were set to do Chinook and Chippewa for this summer. So they'll be in place for 2021. But so it's all these little things that, when you talk about one or two of them separately, they might not seem that big. But when you look at what, the vision that Mike had, the work that Chris put in, and, the people that Ranjo would gather around him, that's what made all this stuff happen. Steve unfortunately passed away in 2012. That in the Ranjo clock tower outside the dining hall, nice central meeting place. That's in his memory. Kind of, again, sharing those ideas on how to make camp better.
And the bringing up the campsites is a pretty good segue into our next topic, which is kind of this growth of not the program, but the scouts and scouters kind of like pulling in more and more people and growing in that regard. Because not to kind of keep talking about these improvements as things, but you can justify it with program all you want, but at the end of the day, the people who control the purse strings might not agree with it unless there are numbers to back it up. And these years, like, the numbers were backing up these improvements.
Oh yeah, I mean, definitely. It's sort of like Disney World, right? Disney World is constantly making improvements because there's constantly people going there. And then there's people going back because there's things that are different each time they go. And that's sort of the model that you can kind of go with. But yeah, so, 2007, we had 1,500 campers, 1,550 scouts, and 300 leaders, which, for a lot of camps, that's a nice summer. But, that wasn't enough. That wasn't enough for Mike and Chris and Steve. They wanted to keep going. It was always about the height of the empire, right? The height of the empire was always elusive. You kept trying to get there, and as you would go, and you would get better and better, the top, the pinnacle would rise even higher, as you were trying to kind of reach it. You're never going to be perfect. You're never going to achieve perfection, but all along the way, you're going to achieve excellence, which was kind of the goal, and has kind of shown itself through the continued improvements, the dynamic program changes, and our rising attendance. So, increase after increase. 2017 then becoming the highest summer on record, with 3,163 scouts and 789 leaders. Almost 4,000 people camped at Resica Falls in the summer of 2017. And I think, that's, I don't know what I was trying to say.
Big jump.
It's a remarkable achievement.
Yeah, it's certainly remarkable. 10 years time to double your attendance.
I think if what you said about the the pinnacle, the peak always being further and further away. I think that if we chase the peak much further, we're gonna have to carve out another one of those 6 camps from the mountainside to fit the rest of the people. But
Never know.
Build another dining hall.
if it's what's it from Field of Dreams? If you build it, they will come. Well, if they come, we'll build it, right?
Yeah.
I like that. I like that a lot better than build it, they will come. If you come, we'll build it.
If you come, we'll build it.
Yeah, I mean, and nothing. We're not slowing down. The 2018, we added a very elaborate archery range with shooting positions for 32 shooters.
Yeah.
Solid structure.
It's beautiful. Gotta get on the roof and stain it during an 08 weekend, so that was fun.
And then after the summer of 2019, throughout the fall, we put an expansion on the shower house at the pool, which you can check out in Ranger Nick's first behind the curtain thing. He kind of gives you a little tour of this year-round shower house for people to use continuously while camp is open, year-round, winter, spring, summer, and fall. In addition to, I already said summer, but in addition to the summer uses at the pool as well. And I think this virtual camp is, another thing that shows that we're kind of not stopping. We could have very easily said that we can't have summer camp this summer, and that's a shame. People can't come to Resica Falls. But we didn't. Chris really, sat down and he's like, "What about virtual? Like, how could we do this?" And so he kind of threw that idea out there, and a group of us kind of ran with it and fleshed it out more, and ran it by a few more people, and added some more things and fleshed it out a little more, and now we have a program that we're operating 6 weeks, 38 different merit badges, extensive camp-wide programs that almost 1,100 scouts at this point of recording are participating in.
One shy.
One shy right now. One shy of that 1,100 right now, which has led us to, the on Good Morning America, which we talked about in the beginning.
Yeah.
And it's and I guess the next thing is, where do we go from here?
Yeah. Well, before we kind of move into that, kind of like with that, like doubling of people, we're drawing in. You have the statistics here. It's 60% to 40%, 60% being out of council, and I think for most scout camps that's quite unusual. I think it's almost entirely within council that they get.
It really depends on the camp. It really depends on the size of the operation. A smaller camp, but it has a large loyal following by many people in their council. Yeah, they'll have mostly primarily in council. Larger, can call them almost regional camps. Something that Resica Falls has become over the last 15 to even 20 years. Yeah, that's a nice ratio of out of council to in council. People come from all over. Of course, many all over Pennsylvania. I feel like a unit has come from every council that's located in Pennsylvania at this point to Resica Falls, and certainly New Jersey. But lots of troops come from New York, a few from Connecticut, Rhode Island, Maryland, Delaware, Virginia.
We've had British Scouts on, to my knowledge, 2 occasions. We had Japanese Scouts once.
We had the.
Oh, you must have gone crazy.
That was a fun story about that, actually. One of the American leaders for that contingent that came to visit us, the American representative, was actually one of my assistant scoutmasters at 2015 World Jamboree. I was wearing one of my staff shirts, and he saw it, and I was like, "Were you working there in 2013? I think it was they came in."
Yeah.
And I was like, "Yeah, it was." It's like, "Oh, I was there with them. It's a small world."
Yeah, for those who don't know, Andy is a great lover of Japanese culture.
I'm a lover of a lot of different cultures. You'd say that about like Canada as well, and like Germany.
CIT Japandi.
Okay, I did not bring about that nickname myself. That was
Doesn't matter.
forced upon me.
Usually that's not how nicknames are. That's not the promulgation of nicknames is not usually done by oneself. So
Sharkbait kind of did that himself.
there's a reason I called him Rich.
That's fair. But yeah, that's the part of it. But yeah, kind of moving on to, moving on. It's this the sense of where do we go from here? What does the future hold for good old RFSR virtual
That's a
beyond?
great question.
Obviously, if you were to ask a staff member for the thing, the meme suggestion, the meme idea would probably be the bungalows, but kind of like in a serious questions. I don't know. Like, is there any insight you can give us into what the future might hold?
I mean, you certainly can't stop.
You stop, you die. Like
Right.
we're like a shark. We gotta swim in the current, constantly keep moving.
Yeah, and that movement is hopefully always going to be upwards, but you can't stop. So random ideas that have happened or been thrown around at various points. An expanded ecology center.
We've been talking about that for 12 years.
Yeah, I've been
15
saying
years. The
what I've been.
treehouse, the ecology treehouse.
The ecology treehouse. I've expanded on that by saying down by the Native American village, there's that old Cope Element bridge that goes across the bush. Could you like renovate that into a suspension bridge? Put the eco center on the other side, and like.
So actually,
fancy.
That could be kind of cool. An
Yeah.
island. Andy mentioned bungalows, improved housing in the staff area for the staff, as well as increased rentable facilities for the off season for units. Certainly more cabins to renovate. We started that with the Nunnyvilles, looking to see which cabins we can totally remodel next to make better summer use and year-round use out of.
Nunny madness. Nunny madness.
And
So I had to reference.
You spent a large amount of time in those Nunnyvilles.
Oh yes, I did.
Probably, if you had to pick the top 6 people that were in the Nunnyvilles, you would certainly be on that list for certain, with the amount of time and work that went into those. And those are kind of facility things, but programmatically, expanded camp-wide games, re-engineering and expanding high adventure opportunities for older scouts. You can kind of go on and on with the different things that you kind of would want to do. But what's next, or where do we go from here? I'm not entirely sure. I think in a post-COVID world, we have to, we're going to have to kind of maybe have a year or two where we focus on the necessities and kind of get ourselves back on track. And that's probably for, every camp, every council, and scouting as a whole.
That just this
Nah,
sustaining.
Nah,
No.
we choose to go to the moon.
Just,
Right. We're doing it because it's not because it's easy, but because it's hard.
we
We
already
gotta-
did space theme. We can't do it again.
We'll do something even greater.
Greater. Oof. Railroading can't be. Gravel. Throwbacks to 2 episodes ago. Last time
Yeah.
Steve was on here.
Yeah, no gravel,
Oh,
and
gravel?
no railroading.
Gravel's a great theme.
Gravel is
Railroading's a new one.
Yeah.
I think that no matter what expansions we have and facilities, program, whatever, there's kind of 2 constants that also kind of give Resica a unique advantage. One is it's the 4,200 acres of Pocono Mountain wilderness that is the pristine Pocono Mountain wilderness. Over 20 miles of hiking trails, the Bushkill Creek that runs through the center of the property has 5 natural swimming holes on it. Cool Dip, Little Falls, Piano Pool, Chapel Pool, and Fossil Rock.
Right. Thoughts.
I saw
know
you.
why that-
Don't forget about and there's 25 miles of hiking trails.
Yeah. So I think that's a constant. That's not going to change. And I think that's a unique feature of the camp. And the second thing is really the staff. I've said several times over that you can probably take our camp staff and put them in a parking lot, and they could still end up running an excellent program, facilities aside. And I think that's kind of holding true this summer with the virtual camp.
Yeah, you put them in the computer and they're still running a good program.
You put them in a computer and the counselors are knocking it out of the park. So, I think, that is the second thing that we can kind of continue to build ourselves upon is, having a strong camp staff that cares about what they do. And that's kind of been a constant thing at Resica. You talk to some guys that were on staff, going back in the 70s, 80s, 90s, they love working at Resica Falls. Almost every single one of them wishes that they were still working at Resica Falls, and they could still be in camp. And I think that holds true for the place, and I think it says a lot about the work and the magic that happens at camp.
Yeah, certainly. Every evaluation, as Chris Brenner says, is the staff is number one. The program can be as well planned as anything else, but the staff isn't there to execute it. It's just words on paper. And I find
Tears and rain.
Yeah, and I find it funny that tying back to swimming holes that Fossil Rock is the one I forgot. I got a nice scar on my foot from it, so how could I forget it? Little fun fact. But yeah, so I think that kind of wraps up everything. Do any of you have any general comments, closing words of wisdom you wish to share? Or I think it's a good place to wrap up the episode. So
Yeah, I don't know if everything that we talked about really tells the whole story. I think there's thousands upon thousands of hours of thinking and manpower and care that really has made Resica Falls the place that it is today.
could make an entire podcast just about the history and growth from the 60 plus years we've been in operation. But got a lot of topics to hit, so we can't devote it. So
Oh, we can just keep going. Who knows? We need some September, October episodes too, Andy.
I mean, certainly there'll be the winter holiday party. It probably won't be every single week over the off season because we'll have other occupations to worry about. But certainly we'll keep you all updated in the off season. But until then, thank you all for listening in on this week's episode of the Big Springs Life podcast. As always, we're here on the Resica Falls YouTube channel. Look forward next Monday, another episode as always. And then Steve would at time of recording, would the Monday this goes live, would that be too late to sign up for a week, or is that?
Nope. So this is going live on, if Andy has it all good, Monday, the 20th of July, correct?
Yeah, I'll have it up then.
No, at that point, you can still sign up for the last 2 weeks of virtual camp, July 27th to the 31st. And I lied. You can't sign up for that week at that point. You can still sign up for the last week, August 3rd to the 7th.
Yeah, so a little promotion. And as Bobby mentioned last week, if you're interested in joining us, having a fun summer of your own at beautiful Resica Falls Scout Reservation, you can certainly keep your eyes peeled for signups to join staff. All right, and so yeah, that'll about do it for this week's episode. Thank you all for listening, and we'll see you next week.
Be safe.
See you at the falls.
2, 3. Oh, I don't want no more of Big Springs Life. Hey, G-Mom, I want to go, but they won't let me go. G-Mom, I want to go home.
Oh, the eco stuff like Big Springs, they say we're pretty fly, but we can't find a single tree that we